the screen.
Just reminding everyone po na nagjo-join, kailangan po niyong gumamit ng totoong pangalan. Please rename yourselves for you to be admitted on this meeting. This is for security purposes po, no? Although we are confident naman na Zoom ay nag-adjust na dyan sa mga ganyang issues. Are you ready, Sir Jace? Not yet. Okay, so we have technical issues, and again, I am welcoming everyone on this stream. Please check the pinned comment para po malaman niyo kung paano mag-join sa giveaways po natin. Okay, so we're just waiting for Sir Jason's PowerPoint to go online. Wait lang ha, I'll just stop my screen sharing. So I'll just give Jason the full access to this meeting. Okay. By the way, if you're asking if hindi kung kailangan ba na naka-video sa ating mga meetings, no, hindi po required, no? Although kung gusto mo pwede naman, kaya lang hindi po namin nire-require na magkaroon ng video camera ang mga tao. Okay? So, meron pong technical problem on the part of Sir Jason. So, let's just start with my lecture first. Okay? All right. So, muna po tayo sa introduction to hormones. So, I'll stop I will just share my screen to you now for the lecture. Okay? Konting patience lang mga Beshi Waps. Siguro po nagkakaroon ng technical difficulties because of the rain. But again, kung may problema naman, pwede man natin gawin ng paraan. Kwentuhan muna tayo, kaya lang ako lang kasama sa live. Kaya ako lang ang ako lang ang nakakapagsalita. I want to say thank you for watching to everyone who's watching right now. Wait lang ha, lapit na. All right, so we're good already. I'm going to share my screen to you now. And we'll start with our lecture for our introduction to hormones. Okay, so our objectives for tonight will be the following. We want to know the hormones and their characteristics. We want to familiarize ourselves with the functions of the hormones and the classification. And we also end with giving you the example hormones na kailangan po nating alamin for our exams. Okay? Okay. Okay, wait lang, ina-admit ko lang ibang sumasalip. Alright, so okay na, wala na ako ibang papansinin kundi yung ating lecture na. Okay, so let me just again start with this slide. Our objectives for tonight's lecture will be the following. We want to familiarize ourselves with our hormones. Okay, we want to know their functions. We want to know how they are classified, and we'll end with giving you the example hormones that are high yield for the exam. Okay, so first, hormones are chemical substances that are produced in our body that will interact with other components of our body to produce biochemical changes. The word hormones is from the Greek word meaning to spur on or to motivate or to urge. Okay, and so the function of the hormones just like that. Okay, they are produced by our body to interact with other components of our body to produce biochemical changes. And they do so in the following manner. Okay, they are produced by a specific tissue or gland, and after being produced, they will be then released directly into the bloodstream and then carried to the site of action. That site of action refers to its target cells. Okay, they will act at the target cells to induce certain characteristic biochemical changes. All right, by the way, we will provide you with the notes that you can use for this session. Okay, we will be providing you with a downloadable link right after this session. All right. So if you are copying right now, that's good. Pero kung hindi ka man makahabol because of the pacing, pwede ka naman umulit-ulit, no? I-upload ko po ito sa aking fan page para maulit mo na maulit kung kailangan mo pong ulitin. Okay? So again, you will be provided with a downloadable version of the PowerPoint that we are sharing with you. So kung nagsusat ka man at hindi ka nakahabol, no, pwede mo na lang ulitin. Alright? So yeah, we already know that hormones are those substances that will have effects on other organs, and in effect, nagkakaroon po tayo ng mga biochemical changes. Okay? Our hormones will have the following function. General function, no? Hindi po ito specific, hindi po ito ang function na dapat mong kabisaduhin para sa lahat, alright? But generally speaking, they are used by our body for the following reasons, okay? To maintain homeostasis, to regulate growth and development, to promote sexual maturation, maintain sexual rhythms, and facilitate the reproductive process, to regulate energy production and stabilize metabolic rate, to help the body to adjust to stressful or emergency situations, and to promote or inhibit the production and release of other hormones. Okay? And again, I'm saying na generally speaking po ito, no? Pag inaral mo yung hormones ng isa-isa individually, you also have to specify their functions. No? For example, when you say thyroid hormones, okay, ano ba yung specific function mismo ng thyroid hormones versus the specific functions na sex hormones? Okay? All right, so we will give you a brush through, okay? Mag-rundown tayo ng mga most common hormones that we are studying in a little while, but let's just move on to our next objective here. We want to know the classification of our hormones. Okay, our hormones may be classified according to their functional types. This is a very, very, very important part for us to study. So please know that there are hormones considered as releasing hormones. And these releasing hormones will be coming from the hypothalamus. That's the organ responsible for the production of the so-called releasing hormones. And these releasing hormones will target the anterior pituitary gland, okay, and promote the secretion of the hormones found in that organ. Okay, so ang target site ng ating releasing hormones will be the anterior pituitary gland. There is an emphasis on the word anterior kasi po meron po tayong posterior. Okay, so anterior pituitary hormones po ang usual target ng ating mga releasing hormones. And okay, also coming from the hypothalamus are inhibitory hormones. Okay, and again, they will be trying to interact with other organs for suppression. Okay, suppression naman ang kanilang action. Okay, inhibitory hormones may also come from the GI tract. All right. Number 2 functional type is inhibitory hormones. We also have tropic hormones. When we say tropic hormones, these are hormones that when produced will stimulate the growth and activity of other endocrine glands. And then in turn, itong mga endocrine glands na to magpo-produce ng iba pang hormones, no? Na magpo-produce naman ng biochemical changes sa target organ. Okay? Hindi kamukha ng iba na pag sinabing effector hormones, no, pang-apat na functional type po yung effector hormones, sila yung mga hormones na ang target nila ay hindi endocrine glands. No? Sila naman yung nagta-target na mismo ng mga non-endocrine tissue cells, upon which they will exert their metabolic effects. Okay, so please familiarize yourselves with the following functional types again. So you have the releasing, inhibitory, tropic hormones, and effector hormones. Okay, the effector hormones are all hormones secreted by whatever endocrine gland you have in mind, except for the hormones produced by the anterior pituitary gland and the hypothalamus. All right. Okay. Let's proceed to the next category of classification. Your hormones may also be classified by the endocrine gland that produce them. Okay, that produces them. So, for example, we have the hypothalamus here. The hypothalamus again will be the source of your releasing factors and inhibitory factors. So, what I'm showing you right now are just acronyms. Okay, acronyms na lang yan mga yan. All right, so hypothalamus will be producing the following inhibitory hormones and releasing hormones. All right, and again, if you will remember, they will be targeting the anterior pituitary gland. So related po yung mga releasing hormones natin dito sa ating mga hormones being released by the anterior pituitary gland. Okay, we also have the posterior pituitary gland, but please do know that the posterior pituitary gland will not be capable of producing its own hormones. Yung hormones na nakikita natin sa kanya ay mga hormones na napoproduce mismo ng ating hypothalamus, okay? Pero ipinapatago lang sa kanya, okay? So the posterior pituitary gland, kumbaga, the favorite part that I say here, the favorite story that I say here for students to understand this one is that yung posterior pituitary gland po natin ay baog, okay? In a sense na hindi siya makakapag-produce ng sarili niyang hormones. Okay, kaya pinapaampon ni hypothalamus yung dalawa niyang hormones, no? I usually use the mnemonic OA, no? Ang OA naman ng mga hormones na to kasi inampon, no? Pinaampon ni hypothalamus kay posterior pituitary gland. So yung OA na yon ay sina oxytocin at si ADH or antidiuretic hormone. Okay, so just as a reminder, kung meron po tayong participants dyan na medyo matagal na po hindi nakapag-review, no? We do have a lot of students like that na medyo years na yung tinagal nila na walang practice o kaya walang review o kaya nag-proceed sa other profession. So right now they're deciding to go back to medical technology. Pwede pa rin naman, okay? Huwag po kayong mawawalan ng pag-asa. Kung medyo may edad na at medyo matagal na, pwede pa nating halongkatin yan. Okay? So let me just remind everyone again that the hypothalamus will be the one that will produce the oxytocin and ADH, but then will be given to the posterior pituitary gland for storage and secretion. All right. Aside from the following important glands, we also have the thyroid gland. Okay, the thyroid gland will produce the following hormones. You have the T3 and the T4. And also calcitonin. Okay, remind yourselves that calcitonin is also a thyroid hormone. No? Si thyroid gland din po ang responsible for producing calcitonin. Okay, although the effect is different from T3 and T4. Parathyroid gland will produce the PTH. Okay, other endocrine glands will be your adrenal cortex producing cortisol and aldosterone. And also sex steroids. Kasama po dito yung sex steroids. Kaya lang sa PowerPoint ng pinapakita ko sa iyo, iniwalay ko siya para meron siyang sariling organ na babanggitin natin. Okay? Pwede rin kasi sila ma-produce doon. Okay? So we have cortisol, aldosterone for the cortex and epinephrine or the catecholamines being produced by the adrenal medulla. Okay, medulla. Okay, we also have the following. No, ito po yung mga sex hormones na nabanggit natin. Alright, ito po sila. You have the ovary producing estrogen and progesterone and the testis for testosterone. Kapag po tayo ay nabubuntis, meron po tayong isang hormone na napaproduce by the placenta. You have your HCG or human chorionic gonadotropin. All right. We also have the pancreas, of course. The pancreas will produce the insulin, the glucagon, and the somatostatin. All right. So in a nutshell, at a glance, ito po yung listahan ng hormones na dapat mong alamin, kilalanin, no? Alamin yung biochemistry, paano siya napoproduce, meron ba siyang prohormone or wala, paano siya nire-regulate, all right? if ever they are underproduced or overproduced, ano yung mga abnormalities associated, paano po natin sila na-detect in the laboratory or paano na-diagnose ng ating mga physicians and confirmed by laboratory methods. No, yun po yung mga dapat nating alamin for our endocrinology. Okay? But again, for the purpose of tonight's lecture, we will just introduce you to each, no, paying attention to the functions muna. Okay, functions muna at kung saan sila napoproduce. Okay, so ulitin ko po, ang kailangan mong masterin is alamin mo kung anong organ sila nanggagaling. Okay, ano yung target organ nila? And ano yung effects nila pag nagkaroon na sila ng action sa kanilang mga target organs. Okay? And one more time, if you're watching this right now lang, ngayon lang, at nahihirapan kang kopyahin lahat, no, huwag ka mag-alala, magpa-provide po kami ng PDF version ng PowerPoint na pinapakita namin sa inyo right after this stream. Okay? Now, let's talk about the other classification. Your classification of hormones may also be done based on the structure and component. Now, meron po tayong mga hormones na gawa sa protein. Okay? Protein in nature. Those that will be considered protein in nature are those with molecular weight greater than 5,000 daltons and include the following. Okay? Pwede magkaroon ng slight changes po dito sa ating listahan na to. Okay? My reference for this is Alex Kaplan, Clinical Chemistry. I really love that book because it's a simplified. Okay? So if ever man na meron po tayong conflict, no, sa ating nakalista, all right? You just check it out from your known reference books. Okay, so I'm just saying na ito pong pinapakita ko sa yung listahan ay galing po kay Alex Kaplan. Okay, so you have here the list for the protein hormones. Aside from the protein type of hormones, you also have the polypeptides. Polypeptides are hormones with greater than 20 amino acids and include the following. So I will not be reading them, so just see them here. All right. We also have peptides, those with lower than 20 amino acids. They are just known as peptides. Okay. In some books, ito pong tatlong to pinagsasama-sama na. Okay. Para-pareho kasi silang gawa, no, sa amino acids na pinagdugtong-dugtong, no, nagkakaroon lang sila ng pagkakaiba sa dami at bigat. Okay. We also have proteins with carbohydrates. Ang glycoprotein yung tawag natin doon. Alright, so polypeptide plus carbohydrate is a glycoprotein. This is a very, very important group of hormones, no? Superstar, super heart natin itong information na to. Ang team of glycoprotein hormones natin ay sina TSH, FSH, LH, and HCG. Okay, silang apat po ang ating kinilang glycoproteins. Ang ating po mga glycoproteins, sila po yung may reputasyon, no, na magkakamukha ng alpha chains. Na magkakamukha sila ng alpha chains. May dalawa klase sila ng chains. Meron silang alpha and meron silang beta. Okay? Yung mga alpha chains nila, identical. Kaya usually, pag tinatas natin sila, we don't use the alpha. Okay? Kasi magka-cross-react lang yan sila. Hindi mo made-determine kung sino si TSH, sino si FSH, and so on. Alright? So, we use the beta chain, especially, no, sa ating sa totoong buhay, di ba? We attach letter B to HCG pag tayo po ay trying to determine the pregnancy, right? So beta HCG is the chain unique for the HCG for establishment of pregnancy. Okay, one role of beta HCG. All right. So quick fact lang yun para sa team glycoproteins natin. All right. Then we also have the steroids. Okay, ito po mga steroids na to ay gawa sa cholesterol, no? Sila po ay nanggaling o hinango sa cholesterol, alright? And this will include your sex hormones and the adrenal cortex hormones, including aldosterone and cortisol. Okay? And then you also have amino acids. Okay, amino acids hormones are your thyroid hormones and catecholamines, okay? Amino acid derived would be your thyroid hormones and catecholamines, all right? And then finally, we have the fatty acids, okay? Prostaglandins are also hormones, but this time they are derived from fatty acids, all right? So again, this is a list that must be known to you. You have to know this, okay? this is the classification of hormones based on their structure and component. And it's also a very, very important basis, no? Para malaman mo kung anong klaseng hormone ba yung na-encounter natin. Okay? So, we are done with a majority of our objectives. If you will remember, we want to know the hormones and their characteristics, their function, and their classification. Natapos na po natin yung lahat. And we will end with a quick rundown of the hormones, no? And their target organ or target sites, target cells, and their functions. All right. So before we proceed with that discussion, no, ito pong next na ipapakita ko sa iyo ay yung tinatawag nating hypothalamus pituitary target organ axis. Okay? Ito po yung kung paano sila work. Okay, so sino yung unang magpo-produce, etc. Lalala. So we have here the hypothalamus producing the first hormone and then affecting the pituitary cells to produce a tropic hormone, which will then go to the target organ and stimulate the production of the target hormone and ending with the action. Okay, so pag ganito po natin siya aaralin. Alright, so first you have the corticotropin releasing hormone going to the pituitary gland and saying to the corticotrophs or yung mga cells na responsible for the production of the ACTH, no, oy, pwede na kayong gumawa ng ACTH, and then when ACTH is produced, it will be secreted and then will go to the bloodstream and go to the adrenal gland. When it's in the adrenal gland, it will tell the adrenal gland na, oy, dahil nandito na ako, alam mo nang gagawin mo, no? Mag-produce ka na ng cortisol. So pag nandiyan na si cortisol, no, it will play a role in homeostasis and function. Okay? We also have the thyrotropin releasing hormone, okay, going to the pituitary gland to stimulate the thyrotrophs to produce TSH. TSH is also known as the thyrotropin. Okay, and then the TSH will then target the thyroid gland and tell the thyroid gland to produce T3 and T4, actually T4, okay, so T4. And then the iodination ng T4 will produce T3, okay? And then, pag nandiyan na sila, okay, andyan na sila, they will participate in thermogenesis and protein synthesis, all right? GnRH stands for gonadotropin releasing hormone, okay? Targeting the gonadotrophs, which are responsible for the stimulation of production of the gonadotropins. You have your LH and FSH, okay, which will target the gonads. Okay, pag sinabi pong gonads, we are referring to the ovary and the testes. All right, and then ovary and testes will then undergo a series of reactions in the end producing the following hormones. You have the estradiol, which is an estrogen, progesterone, inhibin, polystatin, testosterone, inhibin in case of males. Okay, so we have here the female group of hormones and the male group of hormones. Okay, these sex hormones will play a role in ovulation and spermatogenesis. All right. And then you have here GHRH. No, medyo po nakakalito tong dalawang to, no? Kaya kung first time mo itong aaralin, baka isa ka sa mga mabiktima, baka lang naman. Kaya pwede mo i-remind ang sarili mo na, uy, iba pala ang GHRH sa GnRH. Okay, GHRH is growth hormone releasing hormone. Okay, growth hormone releasing hormone target the pituitary for the somatotrophs. Okay, and then eventually producing the growth hormone which will act on the liver, okay, targeting the insulin-like growth factor 1 for the growth and anabolic metabolism. And finally, we have the dopamine coming from the hypothalamus, all right, for the lactotrophs, producing prolactin, which targets the breasts for lactation. All right, so we're just, we're using this table to remind ourselves yung basic hypothalamus pituitary target organ axis na kailangan mo masterin. Okay, ito po yung series of events na kailangan nating alamin kung paano aralin yung hormones. Okay, so at first look, maybe overwhelming, lalo na kung first time mo lang tong aaralin. No? Pero again, you just repeat and repeat and repeat and repeat. Okay? So let's start with the discussion of the specific hormones, okay, with their target organ and function, okay. We have the hypothalamic hormones here. Okay, we have the hypothalamic hormones here. Wait lang gawin ko lang co-host si Sir Jason para ma-admit niya yung mga ngayon lang nag-join. Okay, para makasali sila sa atin. Alright, so going back to our slide here, we have here a list of the hypothalamic hormones. Alright, and again, si hypothalamus po ang responsible for the releasing hormones and the inhibitory hormone. Alright, so ito pong table na to, pinapakita sa atin na ang mga hormones nga ng hypothalamus ay tina-target ang anterior pituitary gland. Yung target tissue ng mga hypothalamic hormones ay si anterior pituitary gland kasi si anterior pituitary gland ang magpaproduce, okay, ng mga tropic hormones or yung mga effector hormones na nabanggit natin kanina. Okay, so banggitin lang natin yung partner-partner. Si growth hormone releasing hormone ang mag-uutos kay anterior pituitary gland na mag-release ng growth hormone. Si corticotrophin releasing hormone para sa release ng ACTH. Adrenocorticotrophic hormone, thyrotrophin releasing hormone para sa release ng thyrotrophin releasing thyroid stimulating hormone, or another name for TSH is thyrotrophin, gonadotrophin releasing hormone for the release of FSH and LH. Okay, somatostatin for the suppression of growth hormone release. PRF is prolactin releasing factor, PIF is prolactin inhibiting factor. So for the release for the inhibiting suppression. All right. Next, you have the hormones of the anterior pituitary gland. Okay, the anterior pituitary gland will produce 6 hormones. Okay, no, meron po tayong mnemonic dito, kaya lang hindi siya naka-arrange in a way ng sa mnemonic natin, no? Pero i-share ko sa iyo kung paano minsan kinakabisado yung hormones ng anterior pituitary gland. Pwede mo daw kabisaduhin yan, no, using the initials of the following hormones. So, pwede mo sabihin sa sarili mong flat pig, okay? Pero yung letter I dito is just a filler para lang magkaroon ka ng sense, okay? Pag in-spell out mo yung mga initial letters ng mga anterior pituitary gland hormones, okay? So you have flat pig, or pwede rin naman flog top. Flog. Letter O naman dito yung filler mo. No, letter O yung filler mo. Flog top. Okay? So yan yung mga mnemonics na pwede mong gamitin para makabisado yung anterior pituitary hormones. 6 yan sila. Okay? 6 sila. Namely again, growth hormone. Okay? Growth hormone, which will be targeting the whole body. Okay? In essence, no, for the growth of bone and muscle. The ACTH targeting the adrenal cortex for cortisol. TSH, the thyroid for T4. And FSH-LH targeting the gonads, okay, for a lot of reproductive functions. And a PRL targeting, or prolactin targeting the breasts for mammary gland differentiation and milk secretion. Okay? One more time, if you're struggling to copy everything that I'm showing you, no, pwede mo po itong balikan kasi i-upload ko po ang video. Okay? And mag-upload kami ng downloadable version ng PowerPoint na pinapakita po namin sa inyo. Alright? So we'll go to the next types of hormones. We have the posterior pituitary hormones, and one more time, ito pong dalawang ito ay hindi originally pinaproduce ng posterior pituitary gland kasi sila lamang po ay binibigay ng hypothalamus kay posterior pituitary gland for storage and secretion. Okay? Antidiuretic hormone, or ADH, is also known as your vasopressin. It will target the kidneys and also the arterioles so that it can participate in the so-called RAAS, no? Yung renin-angiotensin-aldosterone system, na ang function po ay mag-increase ang ating water reabsorption and effect nun ay mapataas ang blood pressure natin. Okay, so antidiuretic hormone, alright, is one of the hormones, okay, that will be secreted when RAAS is activated. Alright, RAAS is renin-angiotensin-aldosterone system. Okay, ADH targets the kidneys to increase water reabsorption, and it also targets the arterioles for its role in increasing the blood pressure. Okay, Oxytocin will target the smooth muscles such as the uterus. Okay, it can also target the breasts. So for the uterus, the effect is contraction. Kaya po minsan sa mga nanganganak, no, binibigyan natin ng oxytocin to help them contract their uterus. And then the breasts will be the ejection of milk. For the breasts, the function of your oxytocin would be the ejection of milk. Alright? Hoy ha, dalawa po yung hormone na nabanggit natin for milk. Kanina, lactation for prolactin. For the ejection of milk, we have here oxytocin. Okay? I do have a story about oxytocin, but I'll just leave that for the private session that we will be conducting if ever you're going to enroll with us. Now, I'll tell you a story, a very, very funny story about oxytocin. the real life of oxytocin. All right? Okay. So tapos na po tayo sa tatlo ha, tatlong major glands, but I'm not saying na hindi importante yung susunod ha. I'm just saying na sila talaga yung mga usual na nauunang inaaral. Okay? Kasi sila nasa taas ng axis, si hypothalamus at saka si anterior pituitary gland. Okay? We are now down to our thyroid hormones. No? Meron po tayong T3 and T4, which are iododerivatives of tyrosine. Di ba, nabanggit natin na sila ay amino acid derived. No? Si tyrosine po ang ating amino acid associated with T3 and T4. They will target all tissues because their function is for metabolism, okay, to increase the metabolic rate. CP stands for calcitonin. Okay, calcitonin is a hormone produced by the thyroid gland, but it does not have the same function as T3 and T4. Ang function niya is for calcium. Okay, ang function niya is for calcium. It will target the bone osteoclasts to inhibit the bone resorption. Okay, inhibit bone resorption. So para siya sa calcium regulation naman. Okay? And if you will remember, sa IS po, no, sa IS nababanggit si calcitonin bilang isang tumor marker ng thyroid, medullary thyroid cancer. Okay? So let's just mention that. Aside from the thyroid hormones, meron din tayong parathyroid hormones. So may ibang estudyante dito na malilito, ay hindi pa pala siya next. Mamaya na pala si parathyroid hormones. Okay? Punta muna tayo kay adrenal cortex hormones. Okay, adrenal cortex hormones are different from the adrenal medulla hormones. Although pareho pong adrenal gland, no, you have to specify saan ba natin-produce sa outer area. Outer area is your cortex, and inner area is the medulla. Okay, adrenal cortex. Alright, adrenal cortex versus adrenal medulla. Si adrenal cortex, pinaproduce na ay yung mga cortisol, aldosterone, at saka yung sex hormones natin. Okay, sex hormones natin. Although, dito po sa ating pinapakitang classification or table, hindi natin sinama si sex hormones. Okay? Kasi naka-separate sila by organ. Okay? Pero dito, madalas ginagamit yung mnemonic na salt, sugar, and sex. Okay? Salt, sugar, and sex. Kasi yan daw yung mga hormones na pinaproduce ng adrenal cortex. Okay? Salt for aldosterone, sugar for cortisol, and then sex steroids for the word sex. Alright? Okay. So cortisol will affect your carbohydrate and other macromolecule metabolism. Aldosterone will be targeting the sodium, no? Siya po ang bahala sa pagpapataas ng sodium sa ating blood. Okay? And in effect, no, pinapababa rin niya potassium sa ating blood. Okay? So another way to say that is to decrease sodium excretion and increase potassium excretion. Okay? And then, again, sabi natin, iba po yung hormones na adrenal cortex sa adrenal medulla. Okay? But in this slide, this is a table that shows you the sex hormones. No? Kasama pa po ito sa cortex, ha? Sila yung pangatlong layer. Sex hormones, estrogens, and progesterone. Okay, si estrogens, estrone, estradiol, and estriol, yun yung mga forms ng estrogen natin, will target our sex organs and promote secondary sex characteristics. Progesterone will target the uterus for ovum implantation, and if successful, maintains the pregnancy. Okay, pag tayo po ay naging pregnant, pwede tayo magkaroon ng placental hormones in the following forms. So you will also have production of estrogens and progesterone, and this hormone here, chorionic gonadotropin, okay, or HCG, is a glycoprotein, okay, with the same function as the luteinizing hormone. All right. For the males, no, meron tayong testosterone. which will target the male accessory sex organs, okay, to promote the secondary sex characteristics. All right? So, yun po yung mga adrenal gland, particularly cortex hormones. All right? Ang ating po next ay ang adrenal medulla hormones. And ito po yung grupo na tinatawag nating catecholamines. Catecholamines. Pag nakita mo itong word na to, kapag sinabing catecholamines, sila po ay sina epinephrine at norepinephrine. Okay? Epinephrine at norepinephrine. Alright? Sila po ay bahala sa ating sympathetic nervous actions. Okay? Sympathetic nerves ang ini-stimulate ng epinephrine at norepinephrine. Okay? Sila yung tumataas kapag meron po tayong fight or flight syndrome. Okay? Malapit na po tayo matapos no, sa listahan ng ating mga hormones, specific hormones. Alright? So again, we're just having a rundown of the hormones na pinaproduce ng bawat organ, ano yung tinatarget na tissue at yung principal action nila. Okay? Parathyroid hormone is produced by the parathyroid gland to target the bones and the kidneys for the following actions, no? Mainly for calcium and phosphate metabolism, okay, or regulation. Si parathyroid hormone po ang magpapataas. Kanina nabanggit natin for calcium, meron din tayong calcitonin. Okay? Si calcitonin po ang magpapababa. Alright? So si calcium, pag nandyan si parathyroid hormone, okay, si calcium ay napapataas. Alright? Si parathyroid hormone yan. Okay? Pag calcitonin ang tanong, ang ating pong action ay pagpapababa ng calcium sa blood. Okay? So, dalawa po ang ating hormones na babanggitin na magkaiba ang effect sa calcium. Parathyroid hormone, pampataas ng calcium. Calcitonin, pampababa ng calcium. Okay? And just as a reminder, parathyroid hormone, syempre manggagaling sa parathyroid gland. Okay? Calcitonin is from the thyroid gland. Alright? For some reason, may mga estudyante na namimix up yan. So, gawin natin ang listahan. Si parathyroid hormone galing kay parathyroid gland at si calcitonin galing kay thyroid gland. Okay? Pare-pareho po silang may kinalaman sa regulation ng calcium. Okay? Alright. So, next, we have the pancreatic hormones. Right? The pancreatic hormones include the insulin, glucagon, and somatostatin, and usually will play a role sa ating mga metabolic pathways such as glycogenolysis, gluconeogenesis, and lipogenesis and such. Alright? So that will be the pancreatic hormones. Okay? So that's the end of the list of hormones that we want to mention for this purpose, no? Kasi introduction to hormones lang. And let's just remind everyone na ang next po nyong aalamin, pag na-master nyo na yung part na to, no, will be the specific biochemistry, kaya yung abnormalities sa underproduction or overproduction ng mga hormones na to, and the tests that we use to diagnose the abnormalities. So again, for the purpose of the following objectives, we have covered the hormones and their characteristics. We also mentioned the functions. No? We made known to us the classification, the different ways to classify our hormones, and finally we gave examples. No, medyo madami po, kaya sabi ko sa inyo, kung ngayon lang kayo nag-join, no, at kung hindi po kayo nakahabol sa ating dito discussion at nag-notes kayo ngayon, ay pwede naman kayong umulit ulit. Okay? So that's it for the introduction to hormones. I hope we have served our purpose well. All right? And let me just check with Sir Jason if he's ready. Okay? Sir Jason, are you ready? Are you already okay for your next topic? For your topic?
I'll try to share my screen. Okay.
All right.
Okay, thank you. Hi, talagang kinabahan ako. Okay, so anyway, good evening everyone.
Wait lang,
We will
Besh.
begin.
Tanggalin ko lang yung video ko. Wait lang.
Sige, sige.
Kasi ako yung pinapakita dito. How's this? How can I stop me? Yeah. Okay. Yours. All yours.
Okay, so good evening again everyone. Pasensya na no. Supposedly ako yung mauuna. pero nagkaroon ng technical difficulty dito sa ating iPad. Okay, for tonight's discussion, I will be covering the porphyria topic. Now, some of you might feel, Sir, parang ang pangit naman i-discuss ng porphyria kasi hindi kami masyadong nakaka-relate. Kaya nga, we will try to discuss porphyria now in a manner na mas mabilis natin siyang maintindihan. Okay, so let's begin. Okay, so with porphyria, you need to take note of the term porphyrins. Ano pala tong mga porphyrins natin? Porphyrins are biological pigments. I will just enable my highlighter. Okay. So these are biological pigments, take note, and it's color red, no, derived from hemoproteins. So our hemoproteins, meron siyang special role sa ating RBCs, particularly binding iron, binding oxygen, so that it can distribute oxygen to the organs. Yun yung role ng ating mga hemoproteins. So our hemoproteins contain, or dyan galing ang ating porphyrins, which is color red. Okay, so ano ngayon yung porphyria? Porphyria is a group of disorder from the build-up of porphyrin. Okay, the question now is, Sir, bakit nagkakaroon ng build-up ng porphyrin? Okay, bakit nagkakaroon ng build-up ng porphyrin? To understand that, we need to review the heme synthesis. Sige, tingnan natin. In our screen, nasa right side ng ating screen, nandito yung basic pathway or flow, no, ng ating heme synthesis. So maybe we can just review some of this, no? So glycine plus succinyl-CoA, it will become aminolevulinic acid. Okay? And we have here an aminolevulinic acid will be converted into porphobilinogen by the enzyme aminolevulinic acid dehydratase. So ibig sabihin, itong ating aminolevulinic acid, which is, gawin natin color red, color blue na lang. Okay, so itong ating aminolevulinic acid needs this enzyme so that it can be converted into porphobilinogen. Okay, now what happens in porphyria? Sa porphyria kasi, nagkakaroon ng deficiency or absence, no, ng ating mga enzymes na to. Okay? Itong lahat ng naka-color red dito, the ALA, D or dehydratase, itong PBGD, UROS, UROD, nasa next slide natin is summarize natin yan. These are the different enzymes that are needed in order to convert one substrate into another. So for example, itong ating aminolevulinic acid, i-convert siya into porphobilinogen with the through the enzyme ALA or aminolevulinic acid dehydratase. Okay? So para makabuo siya ng porphobilinogen. So ngayon, sir, paano pag wala itong enzyme na to? Itong ating ALA or aminolevulinic acid dehydratase. What will happen to our aminolevulinic acid? So ang mangyayari is magbe-build up siya, dadami siya sa katawan natin, and kapag dumami siya, magde-deposit siya ng alin? Ng pigments in our body na magkakaroon ng build up of aminolevulinic acid. So kaya naman sa fluid part ng ating katawan, no, yung mga secretions natin magkukulay pula, no? So let's take a look at the summary sa next nating slide. By the way, itong nakikita natin dito, no, is just a mnemonic of the different compounds na nangyayari or nasisynthesize sa loob ng mitochondria. For you to be able to memorize it daw quickly, you can use the mnemonic Mighty Dracula sucks blood with glistening teeth. So ibig sabihin, mighty is for mitochondria, and the following are the Dracula sucks blood with glistening teeth. Ibig sabihin, Dracula, delta aminolevulinic acid, sulat natin, delta aminolevulinic acid, while itong sucks naman is succinyl-CoA. Succinyl-CoA. While our glistening is for glycine. Ang ibig sabihin lang nito, these different compounds are being synthesized inside the mitochondria. Okay, para medyo mabilis mo siyang ma-memorize. Okay, so much for our heme synthesis. Actually, our heme synthesis, the purpose of placing it here is for us to understand bakit nagkakaroon ng porphyria. The reason why nagkakaroon ng porphyria is because of the absence or deficiency of these enzymes, itong mga nakakulay pula. Okay? So to give us the list of the different types of porphyria, we have here in the next slide, the complete enzyme, complete metabolite, and the type of porphyria. So for example, in our glycine and succinyl-CoA, para makapag-produce siya ng delta aminolevulinic acid, kailangan niya ng enzyme na ALA synthase. Okay? Similarly, in our delta aminolevulinic acid, para ma-convert niya to into porphobilinogen, kailangan niya ng enzyme na ALA dehydratase. So ibig sabihin, kapag wala ako ng enzyme na to, ALA dehydratase, mananatili sa katawan ko ang, gawin natin kulay red, this one, the delta aminolevulinic acid. Ulitin ko, kapag wala tayo ng enzyme na to, ALA dehydratase, your delta aminolevulinic acid cannot be converted into porphobilinogen. Ibig sabihin, mananatili si delta aminolevulinic acid sa katawan natin. Okay, so anong tawag natin sa porphyria na yon? Ang tawag natin sa porphyria na yon is ALA dehydratase deficiency. Okay, so the list will be given to you pag nabigay na sa inyo yung PDF copy nito. Nandoon yung complete list ng porphyria based sa heme synthesis deficient enzyme. Okay, so but for the sake of discussing the most common porphyria, we have here Porphyria cutaneous tarda. Kaya nga meron tayong palatandaan dito that you must always remember the most common porphyria is Porphyria cutaneous tarda. Okay, what happens in Porphyria cutaneous tarda? Ganun pa rin, no? Our uroporphyrinogen 3 needs uroporphyrinogen decarboxylase so that it will be converted into coproporphyrinogen 3. But what happens in Porphyria cutaneous tarda? Ang nangyayari dyan is that nagkakaroon ng deficiency ng ating uroporphyrinogen decarboxylase, kaya naman nagkakaroon ng build-up ng uroporphyrinogen 3 sa katawan natin. So pag tinanong ka, what metabolite is increased or deposited in the parts of the body in Porphyria cutaneous tarda, ang sagot mo dyan is uroporphyrinogen 3 because it was not converted into coproporphyrinogen 3 kasi nga wala itong enzyme na uroporphyrinogen decarboxylase. Okay? So that's the concept in your porphyria. Porphyria is a group of disorder na kung saan nangyayari siya kasi nawalan ka or nagkulang ka ng enzyme that converts one substrate to another in heme synthesis. Okay? So let's proceed with the different tests for our porphyria. We have here yung hindi masyadong pinaperform sa lab. We have here Fluorescence Emission Spectroscopy of Plasma Porphyrin. Ang concept lang nito, guys, is it will detect the fluorescent emission of plasma porphyrin when excited at 405 nanometer. Now, if you want daw, kung gusto mo daw ma-detect yung variegate porphyria, Porphyria cutaneous tarda, you need to set the wavelength at 628 nanometer so that you can measure the porphyrin in your variegate porphyria, in your Porphyria cutaneous tarda. So again ang mini-measure mo dito is the fluorescent emission of specific porphyrin na nag-accumulate sa specific porphyria. So for example, we have here variegate, let's say Porphyria cutaneous tarda. In Porphyria cutaneous tarda, ang nag-accumulate na porphyrin is uroporphyrinogen derived. Ibig sabihin, the porphyrin na tumataas sa ating Porphyria cutaneous tarda is derived from uroporphyrinogen. Sige, balikan natin. Sabi dito, uroporphyrinogen. Okay. So, when you want to detect for Porphyria cutaneous tarda, the wavelength will be set at 680 nanometer so that you are going to excite the derived porphyrin from uroporphyrinogen, and then ang mangyayari niyan is your porphyrin coming from uroporphyrinogen will be emitting the fluorescent light. Okay? So in short, you are going to excite the porphyrins so that it will be able to emit a fluorescent light. Okay? So that's your fluorescence emission spectroscopy of plasma porphyrin. However, take note, if your analysis is unequivocal, ibig sabihin hindi siya ganun ka taas ang kanyang, hindi siya definitive, no? Anong pwede mong gawin? You can perform fecal porphyrin analysis or HPLC fractionization of plasma porphyrin. Again, itong test na to is hindi siya routinely done in the lab, kaya naman medyo maninibago ka, no? But later in the succeeding test, malalaman mo yung mga, makaka-relate ka na kasi yun yung mga common. Ito, in the next slide. However, dito muna tayo sa ating second test. Our second test is erythrocyte hydroxymethylbilane synthase. Okay, so this time, ang mini-measure sa ating second test is the enzyme. Okay? Okay, tingnan daw natin kung ano yung activity ng ating hydroxymethylbilane synthase. Okay? So it determines the amount of porphyrinogen formed from the excess porphobilinogen. So if there is enough enzyme na hydroxymethylbilane synthase, magkakaroon ng synthesis or product na porphyrinogens over a period of 30 minutes. Okay? So normally daw, 20 to 42 nanomole uroporphyrin per ml of RBC per minute at 37 degrees Celsius. So kung dito sa ating first test, mini-measure natin yung concentration ng porphyrins. Dito sa ating second test, mini-measure natin yung activity ng ating enzyme. Okay? So what about the third group of tests? We have here metabolite analysis. Okay? So ito yung madalas or routinely done in the lab. Okay? Routinely done in the lab, ibig sabihin, may encounter mo siya, na-encounter mo siya during your internship kung meron mang for testing, no, sa porphyria. So we have here measurement of porphyrin metabolites in clinical sample, in particular sa ating serum, urine, and sa stool. Okay, so tingnan natin ano tong mga metabolite analysis na to. In our screen, okay, we have here urine as our specimen. You can be able to detect this list of metabolites like your 5-aminolevulinic acid, porphobilinogen, total porphyrin, uroporphyrin, coproporphyrin 1 and 3. Okay, so by detecting this metabolite, you are going to measure its concentration in our urine. Okay, for example, with our 5-aminolevulinic acid, the normal reference or the reference range is less than 3.8 micromole per millimole of creatinine. So ngayon, pag tumaas yan, ibig sabihin it is highly suggestive of porphyria. Okay? So another is we have porphobilinogen. The normal value is less than 1.5 micromole per millimole of creatinine. Again, any increase of this metabolite will suggest porphyria. Okay? So what about in stool? What are the different substances that we can measure? We have here total porphyrin, okay? Coproporphyrin 1 and 3. We can also do coproporphyrin 1 and 3 ratio, decarboxylic porphyrin. Yan. And we have here the reference range na sa rightmost ng ating screen. Okay? Anything that is in excess, ibig sabihin, it is suggestive of our porphyria. Okay? So, another is the RBC itself or in the blood. Okay, you are going to measure the total porphyrin concentration. So the normal value for this is 0.4 to 1.7 micromole per liter of erythrocyte. Okay, so sa porphyria, kailangan mong i-measure ang concentration ng porphyrin sa dugo, sa stool, or sa urine in order for the doctor to diagnose na porphyria talaga yung sakit ng pasyente. And during the time na nagkakaroon ng porphyria or nagka-porphyria ang pasyente, the metabolites of porphyrins will increase. Okay? these metabolites will increase. Okay? So let's proceed to the main findings in some symptomatic porphyria. For example, we have here, subukan natin itong ating Porphyria cutaneous tarda since this is the most common. Okay, so ano daw yung mga madidetect natin sa urine? We can detect uroporphyrin 1 and 3. Okay, in the stool, we can detect isocoproporphyrin, heptacarboxylic, and at the same time, take note, in our plasmaporphyrin, pwede kang gumamit ng fluorescence emission. You can be able to measure the porphyrin in PCT or Porphyria cutaneous tarda if you will set the wavelength at 615 to 620 nanometer. Okay? Take note also in the erythrocyte porphyrin, normal ang kanyang value ng porphyrin or concentration ng porphyrin sa blood. Sir, what do we have a definitive test for porphyria? Please take note that if you will be using this type of tests, yung na-present natin, it needs a set of tests. Ibig sabihin, hindi lang isang sample lang ititest mo. Kailangan mong itest yung stool, kailangan mong itest yung plasma, kailangan mong itest yung urine in order to establish the diagnosis of porphyria. Okay? However, kung gusto mo talagang mag-perform ng single test lang, we can do, of course, lagi tayong babalik dun sa molecular testing. Okay? And one example ng molecular test is the gene identification. Okay? So magkakaroon ka ng identification of mutating gene. Okay? Susulat natin dito, detect, gamit tayo ng ibang color. Okay, so in gene testing, take note, this will detect mutation in the gene. Okay, so yan yung purpose ng ating gene testing. Sa gene testing, it will detect different mutations that causes the porphyria. Okay, so let me wrap up ang ating discussion for today. Sabi natin, okay, sa atin dong blood, normally nagpo-produce tayo ng mga products or substrates ng heme synthesis. Okay? So each substrate of heme synthesis will be converted to another substrate, and the end product of everything is the production of heme itself. No? So kapag daw nagpo-produce ka ng mga substrates na to, it needs to be converted to different substrates with the use or the aid of our enzymes. Okay. So, sa porphyria natin, kapag daw may porphyria ang isang pasyente, yung enzyme na to, itong mga naka-star dito, ay deficient or absent. Okay? So kapag wala yung mga enzyme na yan, hindi sila makaka-proceed sa heme synthesis. Okay? So ibig sabihin, mas stock up yung ating heme synthesis leading to the build-up of specific substrate na dumadami na kasi hindi na-convert. Okay? So kapag dumami na siya, hindi na-convert, it can now lead to porphyria or the build-up of heme synthesis substrate in the body leading to porphyria. So ngayon, anong ating pwedeng i-measure? Pwede natin i-measure yung mga porphyrin metabolites. Okay. So ano yung mga porphyrin metabolites na to? We can measure this one, 5-aminolevulinic acid, porphobilinogen, total porphyrin. Pwede natin ito silang i-measure to establish the diagnosis for porphyria. Also, pwede ka din mag-conduct ng fluorescence emission spectroscopy to identify what specific porphyrin metabolite ang dumadami. Okay? So, again, ulitin ko lang, your fluorescence emission spectroscopy of plasma porphyrin, yung porphyrin mismo ang kanyang dinedetect. While dito naman sa erythrocyte hydroxymethylbilin synthase activity, ang dinedetect niya is the enzyme itself. Okay? While for the metabolites, of course, are the different waste products or byproducts of the metabolism of these different heme substrates. Okay? So kapag daw tumaas ang mga metabolites na to, that's an indicative of a porphyria. Okay? Again, there is no single test that can diagnose porphyria. Ibig sabihin, it must it needs series of tests to establish the diagnosis of porphyria. But you can also do, again, ano yun? That's your gene testing, particularly nucleic acid testing to identify gene mutation